weird fourth quarter because it felt like a repeat of game one. In game two, Knicks were down 90-78 in the fourth quarter and then tied it up 94-94. Felt like a repeat of that 21-0 run because Pistons just didn't score. They had 4 points over a 5-minute stretch from the 6:29 mark to the 1:15 mark. But then Schroeder hits a three. Pistons get some stops, hit some free throws. They win the game by 6, and now the series is split 1-1. Going back to Detroit here, do you think the Pistons should be favored to win the rest of the series, Nate?
Certainly based on the way the two teams have played so far, I would say so. Now, as much as I think the Knicks' offensive stagnation is a major storyline, the Pistons have still been worse in these fourth quarters. So I do think the Knicks have the advantage down the end in the clutch. Cade also was brilliant, but then was as exhausted as I've ever seen a superstar at the end of that game, probably going back to like KD in the overtime of that game 7 against the Bucks in 21. And so, yeah, I still would give the Knicks the slight advantage. Like, they do have more adjustments they can make. They have more talent. They have more ways that they should be able to get going. But I will be honest, Kevin, I don't necessarily trust Tom Thibodeau to push those buttons, particularly on the offensive end. Like, that hasn't been his history as a playoff coach. It hasn't been his history as a regular season coach. We'd see, all right, Jalen Brunson gets the ball every single time, and then he goes out, oh, right, we do have Mikal Bridges on our team. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's maybe we could give him the ball a little bit more. And so, but they don't. Everything is station to station with the Knicks. It's a play call. It's Brunson pounding the ball, and then he makes the play. There's no flow. There's not really much in the way. Like, they'll get movement within a specific play call, but there's not really much improvisation, not much of a system that I can see really where they're moving the ball, multiple options, multiple guys having a way to attack. Karl-Anthony Towns has taken 5 3-point attempts in the whole series. Like, that, he's supposed to be this generational shooting big. He called himself the best shooting big of all time. He's probably the best shooting center of all time. Yeah, except for Quentin Post, of course. And so he's just not getting his 3-pointers off. And they put Harris on him. Tom Thibodeau hasn't had a viable counter for that utterly predictable strategy. And so I do still think the Knicks have enough talent to grind it out in the clutch, but I'm not feeling great about it. I think the Pistons could easily win this series.
Yeah, you mentioned the Pistons putting a wing on Karl-Anthony Towns. Tobias Harris has defended KAT on 90 of 133 possessions in this series. And, Towns didn't score the whole second half, didn't shoot after the 5:20 mark in the third quarter. Like, it's mind-blowing how little he's getting used. And, if you're a Wolves fan, you're like, yeah, we've seen this story before. Lack of assertiveness. He's a baby out there. You can't trust him. But if you're a Bulls fan or a Timberwolves fan or now a Knicks fan, Tibbs has a lack of offensive imagination. How do you slice up the blame pie for KAT, lack of assertiveness, versus Tibbs for lack of offensive imagination?
Well, excuse me, did I miss all these possessions where Karl-Anthony Towns was getting the ball and like not attacking? I mean, I'd have to go back and look at the number of touches that he had, but it can't have been many. And I do understand they're like, all right, well, Carl, we're going to give it to you in the post against Tobias Harris, and you're going to back down and shoot like an impossible fadeaway, but without really drawing the double team. Okay, like I understand that. Like, Carl wants to drive headlong. He's not as bad at that as he was with the Wolves, but still can get out of control some. But I would say, like, run some shooting sets for the guy. Set a screen for him with Josh Hart. Try to get Duran switched onto him, and maybe he can shoot out of that. Or now at least you have their big center out of the play. Like, that's the biggest reason that teams want to put their power forward on Towns. A, so they could switch any Towns-Brunson actions, and B, so that their center can be on a worse shooter in Josh Hart and still kind of mess things up. So if running Towns off of screens more off ball, and then you either have him do something with Brunson, so Brunson can go against a center in conventional pick and roll coverage, or then you also at least have that center out of the play and some of the other guys can be more effective getting to the basket. But we just don't really see much of that at all.
Why do you think Tibbs doesn't use more 2 big lineups with Mitchell Robinson?
Well, I think the biggest reason is Robinson wasn't really healthy enough throughout the season to see a ton of it. Their other problem is they can't
Well, I
score,
mean,
and
here's the thing,
adding
though.
one of the
You see Dagnall with OKC. He's playing Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein down the stretch. He's openly admitting to in the media scrums, "Hey, we know there's going to be bumps doing this, but we need to get this ready for the playoffs." Whereas Tibbs, even after Mitchell Robinson comes back, barely did it at all. And we have seen, I think, 14, 15 minutes so far in the postseason. I'm just surprised we didn't see it more in the regular season because you're right. That's probably why we're not seeing it much now. But I do think it could be
yeah.
helpful to see it.
I mean, they also were just like once Brunson went out, that's about the time Robinson came back. They're just trying to survive and win games. Tibbs obviously puts a big premium on that. I would have liked to see it more, but Robinson's been on a 15-minute a game limit, and they just kind of wanted to just use him as the backup center. I remember Ariel Hukporti went out as well. They didn't really have a backup center that Tibbs trusted. So I think it was more just about wanting to get 48 minutes at center to not play them together. Now, should they have played the long game and maybe tried that? I guess so. I'm just, with this group, I'm not as big of a believer of the whole too big thing because I think Robinson is just too bad offensively. Like, he doesn't really provide a pick and roll threat. If you blitz him, he's not going to be able to make the decision on the short roll. And so I think and then you're making the opponent lean into the whole idea of putting a wing on Towns, and so your spacing gets even worse. Like, I mean, I don't think they need like better defense in this series. They need better offense. So if Towns was just getting completely lit up and pick and roll defense every time, then you might say, well, okay, we'll go to this too big look.
Do we need to see more Brunson Towns pick and roll? Because and through 2 games, they've only ran 10 per game. And to put that into perspective, Murray and Jokic had 35 pick and rolls in game 1. Halliburton and Turner had 19. Garland and Allen had 18. Kevin Porter and Bobby Portis had 13 in their game 1 together. So we're not seeing a lot of Brunson-KAT. They had 14 per game during the regular season. So it's a bit down. Do you think that's a way to get KAT more of those 3-pointers you're talking about?
If you can get the center onto KAT first, then yes. I think if it's Harris, and I did think Brunson had a lot of success attacking Harris in game 1, they probably should have gone back to that a little bit more. And that is a way to get that switch because the Pistons don't want to play a conventional coverage that would get Towns open on the pick and pop. But also, like, Brunson's not that great of a pick and roll passer necessarily. Like, he's going to pound it and try to get into the mid range on those more for his own offense. So I don't know that that's a panacea to get Karl-Anthony Towns going. And I think ultimately, one other thing you could say too is that Towns, this goes back to the lack of Knicks system too. Towns had 0 assists in the last game. Knicks had 15 on 34 field goals. So even if you're not going to have Karl-Anthony Towns isolate in the post, maybe you could get him down there and use him as a passer and do some off-ball screening actions, get the ball below the play, actually possibly get a back cut or a system bucket or something, but that's just not what the New York Knicks system consists of.
Yeah, the New York Knicks system is Brunson, pick and roll, ISO over and over. I know you're a huge Jalen Brunson fan, Nate. He's your favorite player, right?
But here's what kills me. He should be. He should, like, I love small guys with a great skill level. He's not necessarily the most athletic out there. Like, his stop and start is elite. Like, he's physical. He really wants to win, but he's now become my worst watch in the league. I to me, you could debate this, but I think he's gone beyond peak Harden at this point as just a simulator and a call jar on, I would say, 80% of possessions on either end. If he's involved in an action, he may not get the call, although he did get fouled 12 times last night. I thought the Knicks complaining about the referees was quite rich in that regard, particularly given that, like, the Pistons get fouled when they're actually trying to make a play and they get fouled, whereas 8 of the 12 Brunson calls, when I went back and watched them, were specific actions to draw a foul. And so that's not the basketball that I want to see. And then on every other possession, it'll be like, oh, I caught the ball. I felt to look at it. I'm going to kind of stumble right as I catch it. Also, part of the reason why I think the offense is so stagnant is, like, every time he gets the ball, he needs to do some sort of foul drawing thing before he tries the actual move. And so, yeah, you know what? Like, if I had hundreds of millions of dollars on the line and I wanted to win a championship, I would probably do the same stuff that he does. But I think it's on the referees and it's on the league to get rid of that kind of just utterly ridiculous foul drawing. And so all they need to do is just adopt the same thing as the FIBA refs. The FIBA refs, even if you're technically getting fouled, if you do something that's a non-basketball move, they'll just look at you and be like, like what was that? Was that why'd you just throw the ball up there? Like that's not basketball. Okay, if that's what you want to do out here, go ahead.
Yeah, the NBA ultimately rewarded this behavior. That's why it's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse, especially with a guy like Brunson, who did not do this at Villanova. He was not like this in college. He was not like this early in his career.
Well, he didn't have the ball as much either, right?
Yes.
I mean, exactly. The more a guy has the ball, like KD talked about this once when he came to the Warriors. They're like, how come you're not drawing as many fouls? He's like, well, I don't get the ball as much. Like when you're getting 25 possessions a game to create, you're like, all right, well, I can try to draw the foul on some of these. And Brunson gets as many possessions. Like, I will give the league some credit, though, that they have tried to crack down on this stuff. I don't think it's as bad as it was. And that's part of why Brunson has had to up the ante beyond the level anyone else has been at. But, like, they don't give the 3-shot foul when the guy feels contact and throw it up. They've made that more of a non-shooting foul. At least I think they should just not make it a foul at all if you shoot a shot that's not an actual basketball shot to try to draw a call. But they've tried some things, like now you can't like step way in, pump faking the guy and slamming into him. You can't veer off your path and make a guy run into you from behind as much. Like, so they've tried to get rid of this stuff, but I think it's still too literalist of an interpretation on these. I wish they would give the referees more leeway to just say, no, that was a bullshit play. We're not good.
I agree with you. I hope that's a change. And the officiating, it's been cool to see them let them play, typically, for the most part, more in the playoffs.
They've done a good job in the first half, I would say, on Brunson. And then in the second half, it's kind of fallen apart.
Yes. And I think you're also spot on. Cade on a lot of his drawn fouls. They're legitimate fouls that occurred for Cade. And he was great in that game, too. 31 points on 21 shots. Compared to 21 points on 21 shots in game 1. So a huge upgrade for him in game 2.